I have no one since I lost my husband, she cried. The rancher took her in, but what he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that the woman he just saved from the desert was carrying a secret that would burn his entire world to the ground. 20 miles from nowhere, with the vultures circling and her husband's body growing cold, Evelyn Hartwell knew she had a choice: die or survive. The Texas sun in 1873 was a merciless thing. It baked the earth until it cracked, and it bled the hope from anyone foolish enough to cross it alone. Evelyn had been walking for 3 hours, the wedding ring on her finger feeling less like a memory and more like a manacle. Then, on the horizon, a rider appeared. Marcus Donovan saw the stumbling figure through the heat haze and knew what it meant. Another broken dream on the hardpan desert floor. He'd seen it 100 times, but this one was different. As he got closer, he saw the torn calico dress, the tangled dark hair, but it was her eyes that stopped him cold. Green as new grass, but filled with a pain so deep it echoed something in his own chest, something he thought he'd buried 5 years ago. Behind her, he saw the overturned wagon. He didn't need to ask. The frontier was cruel, and it didn't play favorites. "Ma'am?" His voice was rough, like gravel. She looked up. The man on the horse was tall and lean, his face a roadmap of hard sun and harder years. He wasn't handsome, not really, but he looked steady, like a rock in a storm. "I need help," she whispered, her throat raw. "My husband." Marcus dismounted, approaching her slow, like a spooked mare. "Easy now. Water first." He handed her the canteen. She drank like a woman who had forgotten what water tasted like. He watched the way her hand shook, the way she looked back at the wagon. Whatever happened out there, it had broken more than just a wheel. "What's your name, ma'am?" "Evelyn. Evelyn Hartwell." She wiped her mouth. "We were heading to California. Jim. He said we could make a new start." Her voice broke. "The wheel. When he went to fix it." She didn't have to finish. Marcus had seen the work of Apache raiders. He'd also seen the work of desperate men who were just as savage. The why didn't matter. "I buried him," she said. Tears she thought were long gone finally spilling. "The ground was so hard." Marcus nodded. He'd go back later, do what needed to be done. The living came first. "You got family? Somewhere to go?" She shook her head, and her green eyes locked on his. "Jim was all I had. I have no one." The words just hung there in the dry air. A woman alone out here was a dead woman. They both knew it. The nearest town was 40 miles of dust and predators. And what was waiting for her there? A job in a saloon? A quick marriage to the first man who'd have her? Marcus had been alone for 5 years, ever since the fever took his wife, Sarah, and their unborn child. He'd built his ranch from nothing, and he didn't need or want complications. His life was ordered, simple, and safe. But looking at this broken woman, so small yet so defiant, he heard himself say words he hadn't planned. "Come with me." Evelyn just stared. "My ranch is 6 miles north. You can clean up, get some food. We'll figure out the rest from there. I can't pay you. I have nothing." Marcus looked at her. Really looked. Past the dirt and the grief to the steel he saw underneath. "Didn't ask for payment." "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." It was a fair question. Maybe it was the memory of his Sarah. Maybe it was just the right thing to do. Or maybe it was something else. A flicker of an old instinct he wasn't ready to face. "Because it's the right thing to do." She searched his face, looking for the trap. She found none. "What will people say?" she whispered. "A woman. Staying at your ranch. People say a lot of things. Most of it ain't worth listening to." He could see she was fading fast. "Look, Miss Hartwell. I've got a house with extra rooms and work enough for 2. You can stay, earn your keep, get back on your feet. When you're ready to move on, I'll help. No strings." He laid out the alternative. "Or I can give you some supplies and point you east. But we both know how that story ends." She closed her eyes, the desert wind whipping around her. And when she opened them, her choice was made. "I'll work hard. I won't be a burden." "Never thought you would be," he said, helping her onto his horse. As they rode north, away from the overturned wagon and the fresh grave, Evelyn didn't know if she was riding towards salvation or just a different kind of ending. All she knew was that she was moving. And for now, that was enough. The Donovan Ranch was solid. Built of local limestone, the house stood against the endless scrubland like a promise. It wasn't grand, but it was strong. As Marcus helped her down, she saw a barn, a chicken coop, cattle grazing in the distance. It was a world unto itself. "Kitchen's through there," he said, his voice all business. "Upstairs has 3 bedrooms. Take your pick of the 2 I don't use." Evelyn stepped inside, and the simple normality of it all hit her like a physical blow. A dining table, a stone fireplace. After the horror of the morning, it felt like a dream. He showed her the kitchen, clean but basic, then left her to wash up. "I'll see about some food." She climbed the stairs on shaky legs. The first room was his, the smell of leather and tobacco hanging in the air. She passed it and went into the next. It was small, but clean, with a bed made so tightly you could bounce a coin off it. A washstand stood in the corner. She poured the cool water into the basin and began to scrub away the grime of the worst day of her life. The water turned brown with dirt and dried blood. She looked in the small mirror and saw a stranger, a woman with haunted eyes who had lost everything, but she was alive. And that had to count for something. Downstairs, the smell of bacon and beans filled the air. It was the smell of life. Marcus was at the stove, his back to her. "Feel better?" "Yes, thank you." She hesitated. "Mr. Donovan, I meant what I said about working. I won't be a charity case." He turned, taking in her clean face. "What kind of work you done?" "I can cook, clean, sew, tend a garden. I know how to manage a household." He nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. "House could use it. You handle things here, help with the books. I'll provide room and board, plus $20 a month." $20. It was more than generous. It was a stake, a chance to start again. It was independence. "More than fair," she said, her voice steady for the first time all day. "Good. Now sit and eat." They ate in silence. The food was simple, but it was the best meal of her life. It tasted like survival. "How long have you lived here?" she asked. 5 years. Built it myself." "All by yourself?" "Got a couple of hands for roundup. Rest of the time, it's just me." He paused. "Well, just me, until now." Those words hung in the air. A change had come to this quiet ranch, to his quiet life. "I promise I won't disrupt your routines," she said quickly. He looked at her, his gaze sharp. "Miss Hartwell, you've been through hell. Don't worry about my routines, just focus on healing." Later, he showed her the small bookshelf in the living room. Books on farming, local history, even a few novels. It was a surprise. She hadn't pegged him as a reader. "Winters get long," was all he said. He left her to settle in, heading out to check the stock for the night. Evelyn stood alone in the quiet house, the silence ringing in her ears. This morning she was a wife. Now she was a widow, a housekeeper, a stranger in a stranger's home. She found herself in the rocking chair on the porch, staring out at the vast, empty land as the sun bled across the sky. "It's so big," she said when Marcus returned. "Feels like you can see forever." "Takes getting used to," he said, sinking into the other chair. "Some find it lonesome. Others find it peaceful." They sat in silence as the first stars appeared. "Mr. Donovan," she said finally, "why did you really help me today?" He was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was low. "My wife died 5 years ago. Cholera. She was carrying our first child." He didn't look at her, just stared out into the dark. "I know what it's like to lose everything, to have your whole world swept away. Nobody helped me then. Had to figure it out on my own." He finally turned to her, his gray eyes shadowed with old pain. "Maybe I helped you because I wish someone had been there to help her." The raw honesty of it cut through her own grief. Here was a man who understood. What was her name? Sarah. A faint, sad smile touched his lips. She would have liked you. She always said I was too serious. She sounds wonderful. She was. He stood, his joints creaking. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll figure things out. As he walked toward the stairs, she called out, Mr. Donovan, thank you for telling me about Sarah. He paused at the bottom step. Marcus, if you're going to live here, call me Marcus. Marcus, she repeated. And I'm Evelyn. Good night, Evelyn. She stayed on the porch long after he was gone, watching the Texas sky. For the first time since she'd clawed a shallow grave for her husband, she felt a flicker of something that wasn't fear. It might have been hope. Or it might have been the calm before a very different kind of storm. The days settled into a rhythm. Evelyn rose with the sun, the smell of coffee and frying bacon greeting Marcus when he came in from his morning chores. She worked with a silent, ferocious energy, transforming the dusty bachelor's house into a home. Curtains, made from old fabric she found in a trunk, appeared in the windows. The neglected garden behind the house began to sprout green shoots under her care. Marcus watched it all, saying little. He recognized the feverish work for what it was, a way to keep the grief at bay. He'd done the same himself, chopping wood until his hands bled in the months after Sarah died. He noticed other things, too. She was smart. She picked up the routines of the ranch quickly, asking sharp questions about the cattle, the seasons, the finances. She had a mind for numbers, and when she started helping with his account books, she found mistakes he'd been making for years. But there were shadows in the house. The trunk she'd found the fabric in had been Sarah's. Marcus never mentioned it, but Evelyn felt like she was living with a ghost. The extra rooms upstairs remained shut. One afternoon, driven by a curiosity she couldn't explain, she tried the door to the largest guest room. It was locked. That night, a storm blew in, a real Texas norther that screamed around the corners of the house. They were trapped inside for 3 days, the world shrinking to the warm circle of the fireplace. The forced closeness frayed the careful distance they had kept between them. Tell me about her, Evelyn asked on the second night, her voice quiet. About Sarah. He talked for hours, about her laugh, her terrible singing, her love for stray animals. But as he spoke, Evelyn noticed something odd. His stories were like perfect polished stones. Too perfect. There was no grit, no anger, no mention of the illness that took her. It was a story he had told himself so many times it had become smooth and easy, hiding whatever rough truth lay underneath. And your husband? He asked, turning the question back on her. What kind of man was Jim? The question caught her off guard. She found herself giving him the same kind of polished story. He was practical, a good man. He wanted a new life for us. She left out the part about his quick temper, his risky schemes, the reason they'd really left Missouri in such a hurry. They were two people telling beautiful lies to each other in a fire-lit room, and neither one was ready to call the other on it. On the third day, the storm broke. Marcus went out to check the damage and found fences down and a massive cottonwood blocking the main road. The work would take days. I can help, Evelyn said, surprising him. I'm stronger than I look. They worked side by side, Marcus with the axe, Evelyn hauling branches. He watched her, her face flushed with effort, her dress smudged with dirt. She looked alive, more alive than he'd seen her since she arrived. By evening, as they walked back to the house, tired and sore, he made a decision. Evelyn, I want to make you a proposition. She stopped, wiping sweat from her brow. What kind? A business proposition. This ranch. It's too much for one person. I've been barely managing. He took a breath. I want to offer you a full partnership. She stared at him, stunned. A partnership? I have no money, no experience. You have more than that. You're smart, you work hard, and you see things I don't. He looked at her, his gray eyes intense. With you as a partner, we could really build something here. It was an incredible offer, security, a future, a home. But it was also a trap. Living here, Working with him every day, she was starting to feel something for this quiet, steady man. Something dangerous. A partnership would tie her to him, to this place, in a way that scared her. And what did he feel? Was this just business? A practical solution for a lonely man who needed help? Or was it something more? "I need time to think," she said. That night, she lay awake, the offer echoing in her head. Partnership. It was everything she should want. But a voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. What was the real price of his generosity? What did Marcus Donovan really want from her? She had to know what was behind that locked door. 3 days later, she gave him her answer. "I accept," she said over breakfast. "But I have conditions." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "First, I want it all in writing, a legal document. Second, my own bank account. And third," she took a breath, "I want my own living quarters. That old foreman's cabin behind the barn, I want it fixed up. For me." A flicker of something, disappointment, surprise, crossed his face. "Mind if I ask why?" "If we're to be business partners, we need to keep things professional," she said, her voice cooler than she felt. "It's better this way. For appearances, it was a lie, and they both knew it. The real reason was she couldn't trust herself living under the same roof with him, not with the feelings that were starting to grow in the dark. She needed distance. She needed a door she could lock. "Fair enough," he said, his face unreadable. "I'll ride into town tomorrow, have the lawyer draw up the papers." The next morning, she watched him ride away. As soon as he was out of sight, she went straight to the locked room upstairs. Tucked in the back of her sewing kit was a thin piece of wire. Her father, a locksmith, had taught her a few things. It took her less than a minute. The door swung open onto a room preserved in dust. It was a woman's room. A rocking chair by the window. A half-finished piece of embroidery in a hoop. But it wasn't a sick room. There were no signs of a long illness. On the bedside table sat a small, leather-bound diary. Her hands shaking, Evelyn opened it. The first few pages were filled with descriptions of ranch life, of a deep love for her husband, Marcus. But then the tone began to change. October 12th. Samuel Morrison was here again today. Marcus despises him. He says the Morrisons have always wanted this land, that they'd do anything to get it. I told Marcus he's being paranoid. Morrison was nothing but a gentleman. October 19th. A fight today. A terrible one. Marcus found me talking to Morrison by the creek. He accused me of things I cannot write. His eyes were so cold. It was like looking at a stranger. November 2nd. I'm afraid. Marcus isn't just grieving his family anymore. It's become an obsession. He sees threats everywhere. He says Morrison is poisoning the well, literally and figuratively. He started patrolling the fence line at night, with his rifle. The last entry was dated November 5th, the day before Sarah supposedly died of cholera. He knows. I don't know how, but he knows I was planning to leave. He's locked me in. He said it's for my own protection. He said he won't lose me like he lost everyone else. He said he'll keep me safe. Forever. Evelyn slammed the diary shut, her heart pounding in her chest. Cholera. It was a lie. Marcus hadn't lost his wife to a fever. He'd locked her in this room. He was a jailer. Maybe worse. And she had just agreed to be his partner. She was trapped on a remote ranch, miles from anywhere, with a man who was not the savior he appeared to be. He was a cage builder. She had just walked right into his trap. Marcus returned that evening with the partnership papers and some news. "Trouble's coming," he said, not even waiting to dismount. "The railroad's pushing through to El Paso. They're paying top dollar for beef." This should have been good news, but the look on his face said otherwise. "They want more cattle than any one of us can provide. Samuel Morrison is putting together a big cattle drive, pooling all the herds." The name hit Evelyn like a splash of cold water. Samuel Morrison. The man from the diary. "He wants me to join," Marcus continued, his eyes fixed on her. In fact, he wants me to run the financial side of it. It's a big opportunity. But it would mean being gone for at least a month. Maybe longer. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. It would mean leaving you here, alone, to run the ranch. The ranch he saw as a fortress. The woman he wanted to keep safe. Her mind was racing. The diary, the locked room, the lie about cholera. This cattle drive wasn't just a business opportunity. It was something else. Was Morrison trying to get Marcus away from the ranch? Away from her? Did he know what happened to Sarah? "Marcus," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know anything about running a ranch alone." "You'll learn," he said, his voice flat. "You're smart. You're capable." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. "I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you could handle it." His confidence felt less like a compliment and more like a command. He was testing her, seeing if she was the kind of woman who would stay, the kind of woman who wouldn't try to leave, like Sarah. Her fear was a cold knot in her stomach, but showing it was not an option. A trapped animal that shows fear is the first one to be put down. "Okay," she said, meeting his gaze. "What would I need to know?" A slow smile spread across his face. It didn't reach his eyes. "Everything," he said. "And we've got 6 weeks to teach you." The next month and a half was a masterclass in survival. Marcus drove her relentlessly. He taught her how to mend a fence, how to birth a calf, how to spot a sick steer from 100 yards. And he taught her how to shoot. "Out here," he said, his hand closing over hers to steady the rifle. "This is the only law that matters." His touch was firm, possessive. You need to be able to use it without hesitation. She became a crack shot. It was the one part of the training she truly excelled at. The cold weight of the rifle felt reassuring. It was power. It was an equalizer. Every night, after a day of back-breaking work, she would go to her room and secretly read another page of Sarah's diary. She learned that Morrison and Sarah had been friends since childhood. Sarah had turned to him for help, desperate to escape her increasingly paranoid husband. Morrison had arranged for her to escape to a relative in San Antonio. She was supposed to leave on November 6th. She never made it. Evelyn felt a growing dread. Marcus wasn't just a grieving husband. He was a possessive, controlling man who had driven his wife to flee and had likely done something terrible to stop her. And now, history was repeating itself. He was grooming Evelyn to take Sarah's place. The partnership, the trust, the shared work. It was all a cage, built bar by bar. 2 weeks before the drive, Samuel Morrison himself rode up to the ranch. He was a handsome man, maybe 40, with careful eyes that missed nothing. "Miss Hartwell," he said, tipping his hat. "I'm surprised to find Marcus has taken on a partner, especially one so—" He let his gaze wander over her work-worn dress and dusty boots. "Capable." When Marcus came in from the barn, the tension between the two men was thick enough to cut with a knife. "Sam," Marcus said, his voice a low growl. "This is an unexpected visit." "Just wanted to finalize the details of the drive," Morrison said smoothly, but his eyes kept flicking to Evelyn. While the men talked business inside, Morrison managed to get a moment alone with her on the porch. "Be careful, Miss Hartwell," he whispered, his voice urgent. "Donovan is not the man you think he is. Sarah. What happened to her wasn't an illness." "What do you mean?" Evelyn breathed, her heart hammering against her ribs. "He's a jealous man. He guards what's his, and he considers this ranch, and everyone on it, to be his property." Before she could ask more, Marcus was at the door, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. Morrison left soon after. But his warning confirmed everything. The cattle drive was her only chance. With Marcus gone, she could escape. That night, Marcus seemed different, agitated. He followed her from room to room as she did her evening chores. "That offer Morrison made," he said finally, cornering her in the kitchen. "It's for 3 months, not 1. 3 months." The number was a shock. A long time to be alone, but also a much bigger window for escape. "You should take it," she said, forcing her voice to be steady. "It's a huge opportunity for the ranch. For us." He stared at her, his eyes searching her face. "I don't want to leave you," he said, his voice suddenly raw. Not for that long. He was closing the distance between them. Evelyn's back was against the kitchen counter. There was nowhere to go. "Marcus, I know we agreed to keep things professional," he said, his voice dropping to a low murmur. "But I'd be lying if I said my feelings for you were just about business." He was going to kiss her. She could see it in his eyes. And she knew, with a terrifying certainty, that she had to let him. She had to play the part. Her survival depended on it. When his lips met hers, it wasn't gentle. It was possessive, demanding. A brand. When he pulled back, he studied her face. "I love you, Evelyn. I care for you too, Marcus," she managed to say, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. The lie worked. A weight seemed to lift from his shoulders. He believed he had her. He believed she would wait for him. But as he held her there in the dim kitchen light, a wave of nausea swept over Evelyn, so sudden and so strong she almost buckled. It wasn't just fear. It was something else. She had been so consumed with survival, she hadn't been paying attention to her own body. Her monthly courses. They were late. She did the math in her head, her blood turning to ice. She counted the weeks back to that last, desperate night with her husband Jim. Before the attack. Before everything. It was possible. Oh God, it was possible. She wasn't just a prisoner. She was a prisoner carrying another man's child. A child that would be a death sentence if Marcus ever found out. The morning Marcus was set to leave, the air was cool and crisp. He loaded his saddlebags, his mood lighter than she'd seen it in weeks. He thought she was his. Morrison and the other ranchers arrived, a cloud of dust on the horizon. As Marcus swung into his saddle, he looked down at her. "You remember everything?" "Every word," she said. "Take care of yourself, Evelyn." "You too, Marcus." And then he was gone. She watched until his silhouette vanished, and only then did she let out the breath she'd been holding. The relief was so immense her knees went weak. She was free. She ran inside, straight to her room, and pulled a small canvas bag from under the floorboards. She had been stashing supplies for weeks. Dried beef, a small canteen, the $20 a month Marcus had been paying her. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. She scribbled a quick note, a simple lie. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I'm not the woman you think I am." She left it on the kitchen table. She saddled the fastest mare in the barn, her hands moving with frantic efficiency. She had to go east, toward Cedar Ridge, 40 miles. It was a risk, but it was better than staying here, a lamb waiting for the slaughter. As she rode, she didn't look back. The ranch, which had once seemed like a sanctuary, now felt like a tomb she had just escaped. But the frontier was a treacherous place, and Evelyn Hartwell had no idea that she wasn't riding away from danger. She was riding straight into the heart of it. She rode for 2 days, pushing the mare harder than she should have. The open country was terrifying. Every shadow looked like a threat. Every coyote's howl sounded like a death knell. On the third morning, she saw it, Cedar Ridge. It wasn't much more than a single dusty street lined with wooden buildings, but to Evelyn, it looked like paradise. She sold the mare at the livery for a fraction of what it was worth, no questions asked. She needed cash, and she needed to get rid of the evidence tying her to the Donovan ranch. With the money in her pocket, she found the stagecoach office. The next one heading east, anywhere east, left in 2 days. She booked a ticket and found a room in the town's only boarding house. For the first time in months, she locked a door that was truly her own and collapsed onto the lumpy mattress. She was exhausted, but she was safe. Or so she thought. That evening, she went to the general store to buy a few things for her journey. As she was paying, the door opened and 2 men walked in. Her blood ran cold. It was 2 of the ranchers who had left with Marcus. They didn't see her at first. She quickly pulled her bonnet low, turning her back to them. "Can't believe Morrison sent us back for supplies already," one of them grumbled. "Barely 3 days out." "He's a cautious one," the other replied. "Wants to make sure everything's perfect, especially with that railroad contract on the line. Says he wants to check on Donovan's partner, make sure she's holding up." The casual words hit Evelyn like a punch to the gut. Morrison had sent them back. He was checking on her. Why? His warning on the porch. It wasn't friendly concern. It was a threat. He wasn't trying to save her from Marcus. He wanted something. She paid for her things and slipped out of the store, her heart pounding. She had to get out of this town. Now. She went back to the stagecoach office. "Is there any way to leave tonight?" she asked the clerk, trying to keep the panic out of her voice. "A mail wagon? A freight driver? Anything?" The clerk shook his head. "Nothing till Friday, ma'am." She was stuck. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every floorboard that creaked in the old boarding house was one of Morrison's men coming for her. What did he want? Why was he so interested in her? The next day, she stayed in her room, peering out the window at the dusty street below. Late in the afternoon, she saw him. Samuel Morrison, riding into town as if he owned it. He wasn't with the cattle drive. He had come back. He dismounted and spoke to the two ranchers. They pointed. Straight at her boarding house. This was it. He was coming for her. She scrambled, her mind racing. The window. It opened onto a narrow alleyway. She threw her small bag out, then climbed over the sill, her skirts catching on the frame. She dropped the last few feet, landing hard. She ran. She didn't know where she was going, just away. Behind her, she heard a door slam open and a man's voice shouting. She ducked behind a blacksmith shop, her lungs burning. She risked a glance back. Morrison was standing in the street, looking around, his face a mask of cold fury. He knew she had run. She had to hide. But where? The whole town was just one street. Then she saw it. The church. It was small, dusty, and looked deserted. She slipped through the unlocked door and hid in the back pew, trying to quiet her ragged breaths. Minutes later, the church doors creaked open. Light streamed in, silhouetting the figure of Samuel Morrison. "I know you're in here, Miss Hartwell," he said, his voice calm, conversational. It was more terrifying than if he had been yelling. "There's nowhere to run." She stayed perfectly still, praying he wouldn't see her in the shadows. He began to walk slowly down the aisle. "You must be wondering why I'm so interested in you. It's simple, really. You are a loose end." He stopped a few pews away. "You see, your husband, Jim. He worked for me. I sent him to the Donovan Ranch. His job was to assess the place, its weaknesses, its value." Evelyn's mind reeled. Jim worked for Morrison? "Donovan's land is valuable," Morrison continued, his voice echoing in the empty church. "More valuable than he knows. My family has wanted it for generations, and I intend to have it." He took another step closer. "Jim's death was unfortunate. An accident, but convenient. It created an opening. It put you on the ranch. I thought I could use you. Get you to tell me Donovan's secrets, but you're smarter than I thought. You ran." He was right in front of her now, looking down at her with cold, dead eyes. "And now you know too much. Just like Sarah Donovan did." The name hung in the air. "Sarah," Evelyn whispered. "You knew her." "I did," he said with a sigh. "Poor Sarah. She was going to leave him, you know. I was helping her. But Marcus found out." He shook his head. "He didn't kill her, if that's what you're thinking. He's not a killer. He's just a coward. He locked her away. She lost her mind in that room, wasted away from grief and fear. A tragic story. It was a lie. She had read the diary. Sarah hadn't wasted away. She had been waiting for Morrison to rescue her. He never came." "You left her there," Evelyn said, realization dawning. "You let her die. You wanted the ranch more than you wanted to save her." A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. She made her choice. Now, you have to make yours. You can come with me quietly, and we can come to an arrangement, or you can make this difficult." "And the cattle drive?" she asked, stalling for time. "Was that just a ploy to get Marcus out of the way?" "Of course," he said with a smile. "With him gone, the ranch is undefended. I was going to pay you a little visit, persuade you to sign the deed over to me, but you complicated things by running away. He reached for her arm. "Come on. We're leaving." "No." Evelyn's voice was quiet but firm. She slid along the pew, away from him. His smile vanished. "Don't be a fool." He lunged for her. She scrambled away, knocking over a hymnal stand with a crash. She ran for the side door of the church. He was right behind her. She burst out into the sunlight and ran toward the livery stable. There was a shotgun mounted on the wall inside the stable office. If she could just get to it. She dodged between horses, Morrison cursing behind her. She reached the office and fumbled for the gun. It was heavy, unfamiliar. She turned, raising it just as Morrison came around the corner. He stopped, his eyes widening in surprise. Then he laughed. "You won't use that. You don't have the nerve." Her hands were shaking. He was right. She'd never shot at a man before. "Your husband told me all about you," Morrison sneered. "Scared little thing from Missouri. Always running from something." He took a step forward. "Now give me the gun." Something inside her snapped. The fear, the running, the men who thought they could control her. Jim, Marcus, Morrison. She was done. "I buried my husband with my bare hands," she said, her voice low and dangerous. "I survived the desert. I learned to run a ranch in 6 weeks. Don't you dare tell me what I don't have the nerve to do." She cocked both hammers. The sound was deafening in the quiet stable. Morrison's smirk faded. For the first time, he looked uncertain. From the street, a voice called out, "Morrison! What's going on in there?" It was one of his men. It was the only distraction she needed. Morrison glanced toward the door, and in that split second, Evelyn acted. She didn't shoot him. She swung the heavy shotgun like a club, catching him square in the side of the head. He went down like a sack of grain. She didn't wait to see if he was getting up. She ran out the back of the stable, leaving the shotgun behind. She could hear his men shouting now. The whole town would be looking for her. She ran until the town was just a smudge behind her, and then she kept running. Out into the wilderness, back into the desert. She had escaped Morrison, but she was alone, on foot, with no supplies, and a secret growing inside her. And somewhere out on the trail, Marcus Donovan was riding with a herd of cattle, believing the woman he loved was waiting for him. He was a monster. But Morrison was worse, and she was trapped between them. The desert at night is a cold, alien world. Evelyn huddled behind a rock outcropping, the thin fabric of her dress useless against the chill. She had nothing. No water, no food, no weapon. Just the clothes on her back and a desperate will to live. She knew she couldn't go back to Cedar Ridge. Morrison would be hunting her. She couldn't go east. The next town was days away on foot. There was only one direction left. West. Back toward the Donovan ranch. It was insane. To go back to the cage she had just escaped. But it was the only place she knew. It had shelter, water, food, and guns. Lots of guns. Marcus wouldn't be back for months. It was a terrible gamble, but it was the only one she had. The journey back was a nightmare. She walked by the stars, her days spent hiding from the sun in whatever shade she could find. She ate bitter roots and insects, and licked dew from the leaves of desert plants. The morning sickness was a constant, wrenching reminder of the child she was fighting for. After 4 agonizing days, she saw it. The line of cottonwood trees that marked the southern edge of the Donovan property. She had made it. The ranch was silent, eerie. It looked exactly as she had left it, the note still sitting on the kitchen table. She tore it to pieces and burned it in the stove. She drank deeply from the well, the cool water a balm to her cracked lips. Then she went into the main house and found the rifle Marcus had taught her to use. She loaded it, the familiar weight a comfort in her hands. She was no longer a victim. She was a survivor. And this was her fortress now. She spent the next few days securing the property. She barred the windows, checked her ammunition, and created vantage points from the upstairs windows. She knew Morrison would come. It was only a matter of time. A week later, he did. She saw the dust cloud first, from the upstairs window of Sarah's locked room, which she had made her command post. 3 riders. Morrison and his 2 men. They rode slowly, cautiously, circling the house. Evelyn's heart was a cold, steady drum against her ribs. She rested the rifle on the windowsill and took aim. "That's far enough, Morrison," she yelled, her voice carrying clearly in the still air. The riders stopped. Morrison looked up, a cruel smile on his face. "So, the little mouse came back to its trap. I have to admit, I'm impressed." "This isn't a trap," she called back. "It's my home, and you're not welcome here." "That's where you're wrong," he shouted. "This ranch belongs to me, and you're going to sign the deed, or we're going to burn it to the ground with you inside." He dismounted, walking slowly toward the house. "You can't stay in there forever, Evelyn. You'll run out of food, water. Come out now, and I'll make this painless. You want the ranch? Come and get it." He laughed. "Have it your way." He motioned to his men. "Spread out. Watch the doors and windows. She can't cover them all." The siege began. For 2 days it was a stalemate. They watched the house, and she watched them. At night, they lit campfires, their laughter drifting up to her window. They thought they were breaking her spirit. They were wrong. With every passing hour, her resolve hardened. On the 3rd morning, she woke to the smell of smoke. She looked out the window and saw flames licking at the side of the barn. They were trying to smoke her out. Panic flared in her chest, hot and sharp. The barn held the livestock, the hay, the tools. It was the lifeblood of the ranch. She had to make a choice. Stay in the house and let the ranch burn, or go out there and fight. She thought of the child inside her. What future would it have if she let this man win? She grabbed the rifle and a pistol, stuffing extra rounds into her pockets. She crept downstairs and slipped out the back door, using the smoke from the burning barn as cover. She circled around to the well, hiding behind the low stone wall. From there, she had a clear shot at one of Morrison's men, who was feeding the fire at the corner of the barn. She remembered Marcus's voice. "Don't hesitate." She raised the rifle, took a deep breath, and fired. The shot echoed across the ranch. The man screamed and fell, clutching his leg. The other 2 spun around, firing blindly toward the house. They still thought she was inside. She had the element of surprise. She fired again, the bullet kicking up dirt near Morrison's feet. He cursed and dove for cover behind a water trough. The other man ran for the cover of the bunkhouse. It was 1 against 3. But they didn't know where she was. The gunfight raged for an hour. Evelyn moved constantly, from the well to the chicken coop to the woodpile, firing single, careful shots. She wasn't trying to kill them, just to wound them, to drive them back. She winged the second man in the arm as he tried to move between buildings. Now it was just her and Morrison. "Give it up, Evelyn," he yelled from behind the trough. "You can't win." Suddenly a new sound cut through the air, the thunder of hoofbeats, a lot of them, coming fast. Evelyn and Morrison both looked toward the main road. A group of riders was cresting the hill, silhouetted against the morning sun. It was Marcus. He wasn't supposed to be back for months. But there he was, leading the other ranchers from the cattle drive. He must have gotten suspicious. He must have come back. Morrison saw him too. A look of pure hatred twisted his face. This was it. The final showdown. The ranchers charged in, rifles blazing. The battle was short and brutal. Morrison's wounded men surrendered immediately. But Morrison wasn't giving up. He made a run for his horse, firing wildly. Marcus cut him off, leaping from his own horse to tackle him to the ground. The 2 men rolled in the dust, fists flying. Evelyn ran toward them, her own rifle forgotten. Marcus was bigger, stronger, but Morrison was fueled by a desperate fury. He pulled a knife. "Marcus!" Evelyn screamed. Marcus saw the glint of the blade just in time. He twisted, but the knife sliced across his arm. He cried out in pain. Morrison raised the knife again for the killing blow. There was a loud crack. Morrison froze. A red stain blossomed on his chest. He looked down in surprise, then collapsed. Evelyn stood a few feet away, the small pistol still smoking in her hand. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then, Marcus staggered to his feet, clutching his bleeding arm, and stared at her. He looked from her, to the gun in her hand, to the dead man at his feet. His eyes were filled with 1,000 questions. But the first one he asked was not what she expected. "Are you all right?" he breathed. "I am now," she said, the pistol falling from her numb fingers. And then, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Evelyn Hartwell allowed herself to cry. They buried Samuel Morrison in a quiet corner of the ranch, far from Sarah's unspoken grave. The other ranchers, sobered by the bloodshed, took Morrison's wounded men into town along with a story that painted Evelyn as a hero defending her home from claim jumpers. No one asked too many questions. On the frontier, justice was often simple and swift. In the quiet aftermath, the secrets between Marcus and Evelyn had to be faced. That evening, as she bandaged his wounded arm in the kitchen, he finally broke the silence. "How did you know?" he asked, his voice low. "About Morrison?" She told him everything. About Sarah's diary, the locked room, Morrison's confession in the church. As she spoke, the hard mask Marcus wore crumbled, revealing the broken man underneath. "I didn't kill her," he whispered, his voice thick with a guilt that was years old. "I swear it. I locked her in, yes. I was crazy with jealousy, afraid of losing her. I thought I could make her love me again. But when I went to let her out the next morning, she was gone. She'd taken her own life." He finally looked at Evelyn, his eyes full of shame. "I was a coward. I couldn't face the scandal. So I buried her, and I told everyone it was cholera. I've been living with that lie ever since." The confession was uglier and sadder than anything Evelyn had imagined. He wasn't a murderer. He was just a man broken by fear and loss. "And you?" he asked gently. "Why did you really run away, Evelyn?" This was it, the last secret. She took a deep breath. "Because I'm pregnant, Marcus," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "With Jim's child." He stared at her, his face unreadable. She braced herself for the anger, the disgust, the rejection. This was the moment he would cast her out. Instead, he reached out his good hand and gently touched her stomach. "When I came back over that hill," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "and I saw the smoke, all I could think was that I'd lost you. The ranch, the cattle, none of it mattered. Only you." He looked into her eyes. "I don't care whose child it is. A child is a new beginning. And God knows, we could both use one of those." In that moment, all the lies and secrets were burned away, leaving only the raw, difficult truth. They were two broken people who had found each other in the wasteland of their lives. It wasn't a fairy tale. It would be hard, but it was real. 9 months later, as the first winter snows began to fall, Evelyn gave birth to a healthy baby boy. They named him James, after a father he would never know, but they called him Jamie. The Donovan Ranch, once a place of secrets and sorrow, slowly became a place of healing. They reopened Sarah's room, letting the sunlight and fresh air cleanse the ghosts of the past. They ran the ranch together, true partners in every sense of the word. They never spoke of a great, sweeping romance, but built their love slowly, quietly, on a foundation of shared work, mutual respect, and the hard-won peace they had fought for side by side. And sometimes, on quiet evenings, Evelyn would stand on the porch with her son in her arms, looking out at the vast Texas landscape that had almost claimed her. It was still a hard land, an unforgiving land. But for the first time, it felt like home. They had survived. And sometimes, survival is the greatest victory of all. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of survival and justice from the wild frontiers of history.